All right, guys. Just want to make sure that we get everyone connected here. Gotta take one of these AirPods out. Sounds too weird. We're getting everybody on and using this new software. And I think it is just working so much better. I would love your opinion on that because it's hard for me to, I don't know, check for sure to make sure everything's streaming like it should, you know what I'm saying? But I'm feeling good about it, and I'm excited to have all the crazy technology behind us, and all we have in front of us is a bunch of good study time. So, looking forward to that. Let's see. I'm assuming you can hear. I want to hear the music too. I love this background music. I don't know about you, but it just helps kind of bring me to that place a little bit. Music's pretty amazing. Yeah, some of you are probably laughing at my hair. Yes, I told you, there is no pretense about this show, or not even show is not the right word, but like live, what do you call it? Live stream. I just took a shower and this is how my hair is at night. So, there you go. If you don't like it, I'm sorry. Man, we're going to jump back in to Hebrews chapter 7. And last time, we only got through the first 3 verses. Yeah, 3 verses, which we're planning on getting through a whole lot more than that. But tonight, we're going to go ahead and pick up verse 4, and I'm thinking we'll do the whole page that's sitting before me, but we'll see how it goes. Let's pray. Father, we come before you. We ask for your leading, for your movement in our lives, that you would be the one that we tune our hearts to and fix our eyes upon. Father, that you would remove distractions and you would just allow us to really breathe in deep what you have to show us, to teach us through the book of Hebrews, and specifically through this section, through this passage that we're looking at when it comes to Melchizedek. Let us not just kind of rush past it as if it's too difficult or we don't understand it or it's a weird name to pronounce, but Father, let it be something that we can sit in for a few more minutes and receive from you what we need to receive. Pray that for myself. I pray that for anyone else that is doing this study right now, whether it be live or whether it be 5 years from now or 10 years from now. Father, I pray that you would continue to have your way and that your word would go forth, Father, in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, guys, sweet. Let's get to it. Let's switch our camera view. And one of the things I'm most excited about with this new software is how stinking clear the image is looking. And that was one of the things that was really bugging me. And I'm just pretty stoked that we've got the technology to be able to get us to this point where we can really feel like we can do this together and not have the dumb pixelation going off all over the place. I'm going to take this little logo off here so we have a full screen. All right. Let's jump into, well, let's go back first. Let's go back. Let's start at the beginning of chapter 7. Let's just read the first 3 verses that we did last time. For this Melchizedek, king of Salem, priest of the Most High God, met Abraham returning from the slaughter of the kings and blessed him. And to him Abraham apportioned a tenth of everything. He is first by translation of his name, King of Righteousness. Oh, I just noticed that I read this wrong, because in our last study I was kind of like, am I missing something, like in just the way that this is laid out? But now I'm noticing like where the commas are at and stuff. You know what? I'm just not a what do you call it? I'm not a English guy. That's what it is. I'm not very good at English. Where it says he is first, and then it's comma. So it's he is first by translation of his name, comma. So, and then he mentions the two names of the translation that we looked at, King of Righteousness and King of Salem, or King of Righteousness and King of Peace. So let's look at that again. He is first by translation of his name, King of Righteousness. And then he is also King of Salem, that is, King of Peace. Verse 3, he is without father or mother or genealogy, having neither beginning of days nor end of life, but resembling the Son of God. He continues a priest forever. And that's where we left off. And so far, here's what we've come up with to kind of not diagnose, but kind of label who this Melchizedek is. And we'll see more and more why this is significant. First, he's King of Salem. He's high priest. He's blessed by Abraham. He receives a tenth of everything from Abraham. His name translates as King of Peace and King of Righteousness. And then we kept going. He is without father or mother. He is without genealogy, having no beginning or end of days. He resembles the Son of God, and he continues a priest forever. All right, those are the 10 things that we have grabbed out so far about Melchizedek. And then our summary, last time around, if you haven't done that study, I would encourage you to go do that study, even though this passage is kind of you got to trudge through it a little bit and keep the who's referring to who, and you know, it can get a little bit daunting. But that's why we're doing this slowly. Our conclusion was Jesus is the fulfillment of all the traits, these 10 traits that we looked at. And these are the traits that we see in Melchizedek. So why, again, was Melchizedek chosen to be the one that Jesus would be referred to? Well, it's because of all these reasons. And truly, Jesus is in heaven continuing to be our great high priest forever. And that's where we ended. And that was the conclusion that we came to, that, man, how crazy is it that you and I have a high priest who sits in heaven, and he is right now on the throne, and he is interceding on our behalf. Like, if that's not phenomenal, if that's not awesome to think about and to process, and if you haven't taken the time just to sit in that truth, like, maybe you just need to pause this video and be done for the day, and just sit and remember and think of what it means that Jesus would be your great high priest, that he would be the intercessor between you and God, the God of the universe. That's trippy. I mean, maybe that's not the right word for it, but it's heavy. It is mind-blowing. Let's pick up in verse 4 here. See how great this man was, to whom Abraham, the patriarch, gave a tenth of the spoils. So who are we referring to? What man? This man. Obvious. If you keep it in context, this is Melchizedek, right here. See how great this man, Melchizedek was, to whom Abraham, because we just saw how, he interacted with Abraham, to whom Abraham, the patriarch, gave a tenth of the spoils. Verse 5. And those descendants of Levi who receive the priestly office have a commandment in the law to take tithes from the people, that is, from their brothers, though these also are descended from Abraham. All right, so see what I'm saying? It's like you gotta slow down, and you gotta take it piece by piece. All right, I don't want to belabor this any more than we need to, but we need to get through verse 5 here and make some sense of it. We're talking about Melchizedek, okay? And it's referring in verse 4 back to what was already said here, where it says, Melchizedek, king of Salem, priest of the Most High, met Abraham returning from the slaughter. Can you see that? Oh, sorry. I didn't have it on the screen, sorry. Melchizedek, king of Salem, priest of the Most High God, met Abraham returning from the slaughter of the kings and blessed him. That's what's being referred to here in verse 4. How great this man, Mel, was, to whom Abraham the patriarch gave a tenth of the spoils. Okay, so it's referring backwards. And this is where let's just bite it off one bite at a time. And those descendants of Levi. Okay. First of all, the descendants of Levi are what's the best way to say this? The descendants of Levi are the line of which the high priests came from. Okay? So the descendants of Levi, you go back to the Old Testament, that is the lineage, that is the like genealogy wise, that is the line that God had chosen to have the high priest come out of, were the descendants of Levi. Okay, the tribe. So there's 12 tribes of Israel. We're not going to get into all of that. And one of them was chosen to be over a series of time that we talked about throughout the Old Testament before Jesus comes onto the scene, to have a high priest appointed out of that tribe, out of that line. Okay, so they're referred to here as the descendants of Levi, who received the priestly office. Okay, that's what we just said. They are the ones that were the only ones, in fact, that were able to be appointed as high priest. You had to be a descendant of Levi. This is going to become significant in a moment. So make note of that. In fact, let's make note of it over here. Let's say it differently. Okay, so the high priest, just make a note of it, and again, do that as is best for you. However you take notes, if you want to draw, if you want to, I'd love to see some of you draw a picture that would illustrate this point. I'm just kind of joking, but I'm not able to do things like that, and sometimes wish I could. I think we just lost our music for some reason. Let's get our music back. Come on. Bear with me. Bear with me. We're coming. We're still getting used to this new software, but hey, we're getting really close, guys. We're getting really close. You gotta agree with me there, right? You gotta agree with me. So we've kind of beat that dead horse a little bit. The descendants of Levi are where the priestly office, the high priest office, came out of throughout the Old Testament. And then we move on. Who received the priestly office have a commandment in the law to take tithes from the people, that is, from their brothers. So one of the roles of the high priest, we see here, commandment in the law, was to take tithes from the people. So one role of the high, I know my handwriting's so awesome, isn't it? Guaranteed I have the worst handwriting out of all of us. One role of the high priest was to take tithes from the people. And it goes on to specify from their brothers. In other words, from their own people. Like, this wasn't just a few people that were wealthy or chosen to be givers. This was from among the people. All the people participated in the tithes and the offerings. And those tithes and offerings went in through the priests, and some of them were sacrifices to God. They helped keep the priestly office going. They helped build the temples, do a variety of things, and also allowed for this line of Levi as the high priests to have a way to eat as well. If you look back in it, they are the ones that are allowed to eat portions of what is brought in through the process of these tithes and offerings from the people. So it's quite interesting how God set up this whole circular type economy that would allow for the people to coexist, have roles that were designated to them, and one tribe helped take care of another tribe by doing this, and then that would flow into this. And when it came to the tribe of Levi, they had this role given to them, and all the people knew that because they had this role, that it was other people's responsibility to help take care of them in those offices. And you could almost see it as similar to how today we would support our pastors. You know, if you go to a church, most people don't have an issue with giving tithes and offerings. I mean, it can be a touchy subject, but a lot of, and I'm not going to get into the can of worms because I think we've really, in many ways, abused that in a lot of, especially American churches, where we have propped up a lot of other things through the money, and we've guilted people a lot of times into giving so that we could build big buildings and all this kind of stuff that I personally, I'm not against buildings. I'm not against any of this stuff, guys, but I think we have abused it in many ways in the American church, and need to get back to the original intention of what the tithes and offerings were about, and even what it looked like to take care of our pastors and teachers. Taking care of our pastors and teachers, I know I'm kind of going on a little rant here, but didn't mean that our pastors and teachers would live in luxury estates and luxury lifestyles well above the people that they were serving. In a lot of ways, we have started to see that trend happen in America, and I'm just calling it out. I don't think that is a good thing. I'm not against it all paying our pastors and paying them well, making sure that they can, serve the people full time and not have to worry about, having another job, even though I think there's benefits of even having another job. We see Paul as a tent maker, as well as one of the most significant people of the entire New Testament establishing the early church. And he was a tent maker and didn't take from a lot of churches when he knew that he could. So I think there's a balance there, and there's times when pastors and teachers need to withhold and abstain from receiving from people, for the people's good as well as for their good. But then there's definitely a time and place when we need to support them. And I have no problem with that. It's just, I believe we need to get back to a good demonstration of what that looks like at a corporate level, and not abuse the tithes and the offerings that are coming in to do things to build our own agenda, or to prop up a new book sale, or to help the pastor build a multi-million-dollar house in the new neighborhood. I'm just calling it what it is. I've seen all of that, and I don't think that was the purpose of the tithes and the offerings, and of us when Paul talks about that basically a person, or a teacher or a pastor, is worth his wages. The work that he's putting in is worth. How do I say it? He is worthy, is the word. He's worthy of being paid a wage for that. And so it's very scriptural that paying our pastors is not the issue. It is that we have skewed what that looks like and to what degree we take care of our pastors and teachers. And I think that in many ways has been the rise of a lot of these pastors and teachers that seem to be untouchable. They end up really becoming almost what in our society we would consider to be an influencer. That's the word we would use these days, that we have influencer pastors now. And do I think a pastor should be an influencer? But not from the standpoint of how we see influencers in our society now, where they're, wearing the right clothes, and they're, prepped up and this, and they're living the high life of, driving some of the nicest cars and living in the best neighborhoods. I know I'm going on and on, but I think we have really done a disservice to the church, Big C, the worldwide church, and we have distorted what the real church looks like in America in many ways as a result of this slippery slope. So enough said on that. All of these tithes and offerings bridge all the way back to the Old Testament. So this wasn't a new thing that all of a sudden somebody thought up in 1850 in order to build churches on the Western Prairie or something. No, this goes all the way back, and that's the important part here of seeing that all the way back to the high priests. One of the roles was to take the tithes and the offerings from the people, from their own brothers, from the people that they were doing life with. Let's move on here. Though these also are descended from Abraham. Okay, let's read this in context. And those descendants of Levi who receive the priestly office have a commandment in the law to take tithes from the people, that is, from their brothers, though these also are descended from Abraham. So it gets a little complicated. I mean, even I'm having to read back over that. What is the significance of the though these also are descended from Abraham? Sometimes I'm not going to beat around the bush. I've said this before. Sometimes you read through something multiple times and it's like, okay, God, is there something significant that I'm supposed to pull out of that? And maybe you're looking at that and God is going, yes, boom, boom, boom. Then start writing notes down. Again, don't copy. Like, this isn't school. I've said it a million times. You're not going to get graded on this. Okay? Be in this moment between you and the Lord. Let's do it together. If you need to pause, if you need to turn the volume down, get my voice out of it, please do that. Please. If that's what's going to be helpful. But here I'm trying to see what is the significance from, though these also are descended from Abraham. Okay? These brothers are descended from Abraham. So I just don't, right now, I don't see like if there's a big significant piece there for us to grab a hold of. And I'm sharing this all because I want, as I do it, I want to walk through like my own processing so that you don't feel alone in your processing. And when you get to something where you don't understand it or you don't see the connection, you don't feel alone, like, oh man, I must be the only one that just doesn't get it. No, you're not. No, you're not. Let's move on to verse 6. Sometimes you just keep going, and God has something else. But this man who does not have his descent from them received tithes from Abraham and blessed him who had the promises. Okay. This man is again referring back to Melchizedek. Okay? He's referred to up here as this man as well. Interesting. But this man who does not have his descent from them. Okay. Check this out. From who? This man, Mel, who does not have his descent. We're talking about like genealogy, line, like descendants of Levi. He does not have his descent from them. From who? Who would that be referring to? Them. The descendants of Levi. Right? I mean, it's just context. Who does not have his descent. So Mel does not have his descent from them, from Levi. This is significant. Remember I said that there's going to be something significant about all of the high priests coming out of this line as descendants of Levi. Melchizedek, Mel, does not So, this is interesting, and it's going to get more interesting. I don't want to spoil it, but Melchizedek, does not come from the line of Levi. That's what we're seeing here. This man who does not have his descent from them, from the line of Levi, received tithes from Abraham and blessed him who had the promises. So you're seeing that, well, it's going to even go on to explain why this verse 6 is significant. I think it's in verse 7, so let's just keep looking at it. It is beyond dispute that the inferior is blessed by the superior. So now we're setting up this who's blessing who type of thing. So we go back to verse 6. Melchizedek, not of the line of Levi, received tithes from Abraham. I'm just going to dissect this a little bit. Mel received tithes from Abraham. And blessed him who had the promises. Blessed him, who is him? Abraham, which is right, Abe. And blessed him who had the promises. What promises? Remember, we saw, I think, the last study, or the study before, that Abraham was about 100 years old. His wife Sarah was about the same, had not had kids, and God came to him and promised to them that they would have a son. But not only would they have the son, he goes on to promise to Abraham that his descendants would be greater than the sands on the seashore or the stars in the sky. In other words, to say, you will have a line, Abraham, that is beyond count. Like, you won't be able to count the amount of people in your line. And this is all coming when Abraham is old, without any kids, and no one who is ready or able to even continue his line at the point of his death. So it's interesting that he is regarded in the Old Testament, Abraham, as this pillar that so much comes out of the line of Abraham, which started as a promise from God to two old people, most least likely of people, at a very unlikely time, not when they were 18 and 21 and raring to go and ready to have kiddos. They couldn't have kids, and we're moving towards the end, and God said, no, I'm going to step in. I'll be the one that does it. So here's what's significant. So that's Abraham. Like, Abraham's pretty legit, right? Verse 7. It is beyond dispute that the inferior is blessed by the superior. The inferior is blessed by the superior. Sit in that for a second. What is it saying? In context. The inferior is blessed by the superior. He's just making, in a sense, a general point here, that this is just the way society is set up. Those who are inferior, those who are lesser, are always blessed by those who are greater, right? I mean, that's just, even in our society, that's still fairly accurate. Usually, the blessing comes one direction. The lesser, we're just going to use the word lesser rather than inferior. You can use whatever word you want there. I mean, it's just, kind of the pecking order, you could say, of society. The lesser blessing usually comes or goes in one direction. The greater is blessing the lesser. Very rarely would you ever see the lesser or the the lesser blessing the one that is greater, especially in this society, because it is a society that's built around who is greater and who is lesser, right? We're not as much that way now, but even, let's be honest, we still are. We don't have like the caste system or anything like that, but we still kind of do, right? We still kind of do. So what he's saying here in verse 7 is Abraham should be the greater. But we see that Melchizedek blesses Abraham. Melchizedek blesses Abraham. That, in their time, didn't make sense. Because Abraham would have been considered the greater of the two, especially because we found out that Melchizedek didn't even come from the line of Levi. Are you getting this? That's why we're taking it slow. It is just, you gotta like slow down your brain. At least I do. And then you don't want to just take a bunch of facts either. You've got to then process what's being said, and then by the end of this, and as we're going, make application of why that's significant, and why that, is even worth noting. Why is the writer spending time putting emphasis on this? Verse 8. In the one case, tithes are received by mortal men. My audio in my ear, I just want to make sure that I'm hearing, because I'm just hearing a bunch of static. So I hope that you're not hearing a bunch of static. Let's put these in. Let's try to redo this. Okay, we're back. It was just my AirPod. Verse 8. In the one case, tithes are received by mortal men. But in the other case, so we're comparing two things here. But in the other case, by one of whom it is testified that he lives. See how it's like, even as I read that, it's like, what? See, if you just read through that and you move on, I mean, there's just no way you're gonna get anything out of it. Even if you read it 18 million times, sometimes you're still gonna struggle getting much out of it, right? Let's just be honest. It's just, even different seasons, we see different things, like we talked about. Big breath. Try again. In the one case, tithes are received by mortal men. Okay? So we can see. You start to connect the dots. In the one case. Given what we've just seen here, tithes are received by mortal men. Okay. So, these descendants of Levi, this priestly office, tithes are received by mortal men. In the priestly office, they were just mortal men, right? The descendants of Levi, let's be clear, were not of a special type. They were the same as you and I, and the same as every other tribe that was out there. They had just been chosen by God to be the ones where the priestly office would come out of. So in verse 8, the writer is saying, in the one case, so in this case, the first case where the descendants of Levi were taking over the priestly office, tithes are received by mortal men. Okay, so he's clarifying these high priests. Let's just even make a note here. The high priests were mere mortal men. In other words, use whatever language you want there. They were just freaking like you and me. That's it. And I mean, that's a Toby translation, but that's basically what the writer's wanting us to get thus far, in my opinion. In the one case, tithes are received by mortal men, just normal folk. But, so he's going to contrast, using the word but, in the other case. So the other case is already referred to the first case up here. The other case would have to be Melchizedek, right? That's the other case that we've been looking at here.
Okay. I found this on the web first,
Siri,
though. That's the other case that we've been looking at here. Check it out.
Siri just wanted to answer my question, which I wasn't asking her a question. Does that happen to you guys? If you have an iPhone, all of a sudden Siri thinks that you're asking her questions. Wouldn't you think by now, by the way, that Apple would have Siri be a little bit smarter than what she is? I almost think that Siri is getting dumber as she gets older. And that's not Apple. If you're listening, that's not a good thing. That's not what we want. We're going in the wrong direction. Okay, that has nothing to do with the high priest. The other case, Melchizedek, would be the other case, by one of whom it is testified that he lives. It's weird language. Sometimes, here's another little tidbit. Sometimes it's good, and we're not going to do this right now because we're already running out of time. We're obviously not going to make it very far again. It's good to get out another Bible or go to like Bible Gateway on your computer. And on Bible Gateway, you can type in this verse, like Hebrews 7, verse 8. And you can bring it up where it shows all different translations of that one verse. And sometimes that's helpful to at least get to the crux of what the original writer was trying to convey, because this was written in Greek. So the translation is taking